All right. Can you see my slides?
Looks good.
Okay. All right. So, as I was putting together this talk, after about like the 20th screen cap, as I was going through different how to use different LLM models and examples, I decided that I was just going to split this into two parts. I was going to sort of have sort of my slideshow presentation on how I look at the use of AI and LLMs, large language models, in the different ways I use it in my clinical and professional life, and how other people may be using it. And then maybe go through some real-time workflows on how I use it in prompting. So. Um, let's sort of start the talk. So I'm Chris Chu. As Riley said, I'm the lead physician here at Outpatient Care East, but I'm also the director of digital scholarship here in the Division of General Internal Medicine. So I work with pharmacy residents all the time and our pharmacists in our division. And we talk a lot about different ways which we use medicine and sort of the cooler technology. So I'm really appreciated to have been invited to talk today. So I'm glad I was able to stick around for that really thoughtful discussion on ethics beforehand, and definitely try to keep those in mind. So now that you've heard about all of the caveats in the use and thought processes you need to think about when using AI, hopefully you can then apply those as we talk about how we may be using in our daily lives. And I know especially a lot of our, you young residents out there are probably of what we call a digital generation. You guys are digital natives. You've grown up with a lot of things digitally. And so hopefully a lot of these things should be pretty easy for you to understand, but we'll talk about how to hone some skills if you want to get better at what we call prompt engineering and so forth. So my goal here is really to show you the practical ways of using these tools into clinical practice, education, maybe even documentation as that sort of evolves, and hopefully they'll be relevant to you as work as pharmacy residents. So as you've already heard about potential risks and biases, I just want you to think about like sort of the big picture implications of AI today, but I want to make sort of this personal and practical, and I want to show you tools and how you can use now. You can use them, if hopefully when our pharmacy clinical staff has access to DAX Copilot for writing notes, how to use it for patient education. There were some discussions already about how to apply it to research, but sort of the way I like to think about research, such as in-time learning and education, and then even studying. So I just want to reemphasize that AI won't really shouldn't replace your clinical judgment, but hopefully you can use this as a tool to hopefully extend your bandwidth and be more effective and more efficient in doing the things you have to do on your daily life. So a lot of things that we're going to look at is, sorry. So these are a couple of the LMs that I may talk about. There's a couple other that I thought about after I created this slide, and some of these you have already heard about. So ChatGPT obviously is the biggest one that first came into the public consciousness. So we're going to talk about that. Claude is a LLM from Anthropic that I have used previously. It's really great for drafting, summarizing, and brainstorming. Both ChatGPT and Claude are good for that. Depending on which model you use, some may be better with natural language versus others. Google Gemini is probably one of the other big knowns just because it's through Google. It's cheap because it's free compared to some of the ChatGPT and Claude, which are sort of held by the number of tokens, which means how much information you can supply it for it to create answers. One that you may have been hearing about more recently is OpenEvidence, which is an LM that utilizes a lot of data like from PubMed, is really great at doing at least initial research and possibly summarizing what that clinical literature may show. Doximity GPT is something similar to ChatGPT, but it's from the company Doximity. It has some other parts in terms of HIPAA compliance and things like that that's trying to build into its workflows. And then lastly, I'm going to briefly talk about DAX Copilot. I know that this currently is not available to our pharmacists, but it may be in the future, and definitely a lot of our physicians are using it in their clinical workflow as well. And that's pretty much just an AI scribe that can help you with your patient encounters. Next, I sort of want to just start just talking about in terms of patient communication. So one way I use LLMs routinely is for medication handouts or other types of handouts in general. So whether it's developing a handout like, I want you to try a different dietary regimen, like a low-calorie diet or a fat-free diet, or this is a medication we're starting. You're on a thiazide diuretic or a loop diuretic, and we're following you closely with chemistries and so forth. And while we're doing that, what I really love about using an LM for a handout is you can actually specify much better at saying, I want you to use patient accessible language, or specify it down to like a fourth grade level. Or if, say, you have a very sophisticated patient who is also a physician or somewhere in the medical field that you want to be able to give more high level handouts to, you can have it generate that. I think what's nice about handouts is oftentimes I'm writing handouts for things that I already know about. So I'm also an content expert in what I'm trying to create. So it just helps you with sort of that writer's block. I don't know how many times that I've sat down to write a handout for a patient, and you just sort of have to think like, all right, now what do I want to say? Game plan it. It takes you like 15 minutes to write it. Or as you can use an LLM to initially write this handout, hopefully in good grammar and appropriate information, and then you can review it again and make any tweaks to your heart's content. Next is an area which is still evolving. I believe if anyone watched WWDC with Apple, I think that was yesterday, they are integrating a lot of translation technologies into their next release of iOS. But this is something that I don't think is quite at prime time, especially you talk to a lot of our patient-centered experts here that are trying to do language concordant care. They sort of shy away, at least here at OSU, from using AI for language translation, but definitely I've had lots of good use for it when I'm traveling abroad, and I think this will only get better. Next would be, sort of tailored explanations. I'll talk about this in a little bit in terms of talking about results too, but being able to provide information just like with the handouts on how to explain like results of something. So very often, I'll get a CBC, and of course, the RBCs are abnormal for some random reason, but the rest of the CBC is absolutely normal. And so just trying to like, not saying the same thing over and over again with like a couple sentences, but allowing a nice sort of more nuanced discussion to provide to a patient in a result note. In terms of documentation, like we sort of discussed before, so DAX Copilot we have here at OSU, but having an AI scribe has been super useful for me in my daily practice. And I know hopefully with our pharmacists who are here in clinic who have our independent care collaborative, they see patients too here at Outpatient Care East. So being able to talk to a patient, being able to be there fully with a patient while you're talking to them, instead of having to worry about talking to them, looking through the chart, interpreting what they're saying to me so that I'm writing into a note, also thinking about the next question and doing a lot of that. That's a lot of mental work that you're trying to do a lot of parallel tasks at the same time. So I found that having an AI scribe when I'm seeing a patient has been super useful, especially for those very complex patients, especially here in internal medicine. You may have a patient with 10 or 12 different things, and then as they talk, they may start going off into a different tandem as they're having that discussion. And before, as I would take my histories with patients, as they talk about different things, I'm just trying to keep up because I'm trying to multitask. I'm trying to pay attention to what they're saying, but also make sure I get all the information onto my notes so that I don't forget what's going on. And so that back and forth can be very taxing. So having, just like many of our dermatologists who have scribes in a clinic session, an AI scribe can be very helpful. In fact, I've even found that AI scribes can be, especially DAX Copilot, has been even more effective in clinic because it'll document some of the small things that were discussed that I would have otherwise, because I'm trying to write a nice, concise note, I would have otherwise just skipped, but now it's documented from a medical legal standpoint. And so, very often, my notes are done before the end of my clinic day, and it's been super useful. So that's one place in terms of documentation. Next is summarization of results. I sort of talked about that already, but oftentimes as I see a patient, I'll get all sorts of different results. And sometimes I'll get a CT scan with a lung nodule, and there are multiple ways you can explain it. So Sometimes I'll just use an LLM. I will place, hey, patient has a incidental nodule that is less than, 6 millimeters, using, the Fleischner criteria. The follow-ups are these. Can you write me a nice, concise note in patient accessible language at the third grade level or second grade level, and it can spit out something really nice for me. I can review it and say this is appropriate, and I'll send it out to the patient. And then lastly, in terms of communication, so this is, I would say this is outside of just provider to patient communication, but even to my own peers. So there are many times in which I will, people have told me that I sort of, sometimes my emails sound angry. So this is a place where I have used this effectively. I think even in the early discussions, like it's a very sophisticated spell check, but also can sort of change tone too. I know in my personal life, as I've written emails in the past, I've written an email, I've put it as a draft, and I'll come back to it later and be like, oh yeah, that sort of sounds off sort of curt. I need to change that. Nowadays, I'll write my email directly into ChatGPT or one of the other GPTs, and it can spit out something very nice. Another way I actually use it is if I have lots of jumbled thoughts that I'm having at the same time, I will pull out my ChatGPT app on my phone, and it has a voice recognition on it. So I will just turn on the voice recorder, and I will speak directly into ChatGPT, and I will just continue to talk about all sorts of things like, I need to contact this person and this person to do this. These are my to-do lists, things like that. And just to help me with project management and to develop a single email. And ChatGPT has, you can have it also store some of your own personal information so it knows that I'm the director of education and that I'm working on so-and-so study. And so it really helps me in terms of project management, also with just general email to people. I know that if I had not used ChatGPT, if I sent an email, it may be not as clear as I would want it to be in terms of my language and my grammar. So using an LLM from that standpoint has been super useful in my daily life, especially on my administrative stuff. So in terms of research, there was a lot of discussion about research in the first half hour of this discussion, but I do want to say how I use it, and I'm going to also demonstrate this in a little bit. But using ChatGPT and Open Evidence, which now are much better at citing their research, so citing the articles, has been really great for what I call in-time learning. So as a learner trying to learn what's going on, what's up to date. Also when I'm trying to just search a question, whether it's for my own research or whether it's for just like to understand a subject better, being able to use that as a source. I think, and we'll talk about pros and cons that you have to look up, but obviously there was some discussion about hallucinations with LLM. So definitely they can sort of make up things and studies. What's great about some of the newer versions of ChatGPT and Open Evidence, which cites its sources after it summarizes the evidence, is, if I'm just using it to double check what I already know, then it's fine. But if it tells me something that I'm sort of unsure about or I question, what's nice is the citations are right there. You can click the hyperlink, you can read the source yourself and to double check. So I would say what's great about using Open Evidence or other LLMs is the fact that now it can provide citations for your search queries, but definitely double check if you need to. Another thing is brainstorming methods. So definitely, as they are sophisticated enough that many LLMs have been fed lots of different studies. So, I'm working with some medical residents right now, is the implementation of DAX Copilot into our residency. And so looking at pre and post implementation of using an AI scribe in clinic, whether it improves efficiency or whatnot. So I sort of basically word vomited into ChatGPT sort of what I was looking at, some of the things I was interested in, and it sort of gave me at least a structured framework. Obviously, after that, I used that to sort of massage and understand what was going on. And in the end, with the help of one of my residents, we ended up developing the things that we ended up submitting for the IRB. So a lot of our IRB draft proposals were using examples of other draft IRB proposals, as well as the brainstormer had used with ChatGPT. So that's part of like our drafting assistance here. So in the end, like obviously there are major discussions, especially when we talked about in the first half hour about, using AI to actually write your study afterwards and what's acceptable and whatnot. But from a project organization standpoint, from a brainstorming standpoint, I found it super useful. So, just understanding that AI is a tool, just like everything else we do, and we always have to sort of find a balance between being, I don't being a Luddite versus being like too far edge and just going whole hog into something that hasn't been fully proven. But I do think that we can use AI in our daily lives to make ourselves more efficient, but then be aware that it does hallucinate facts. So if you're concerned about something, you should always double check your facts. But I think it's a very useful thing in our daily lives. Also, be very mindful. So, open evidence and Doximity GPT, some of their main privacy concerns they try to address by saying that they are HIPAA compliant. Open evidence, even when you start, what you can do is when you do a search, you can share it publicly or share it privately, and you can determine how much HIPAA will be involved in there. My general recommendation is to leave no HIPAA information on there. So, like I had for a resultant that we discussed earlier, I have a patient with a incidental lung nodule less than this size. And using Fleshner criteria, what's the follow-up? Having that information already, I'm not providing any specific, HIPAA issues, but it is helping me with my results regardless. You know, just going back, I cannot emphasize this much as enough, just as we had discussed earlier in the ethics, there are lots of issues with AI use and understanding that just some of the misconceptions are only sort of the tip of the iceberg. As we progress, being over-reliant on just, having it right, your next report and not verifying any of the citations. These are sort of important things, and then, of course, the ethical oversights as well. I want to provide a link. I will share this later, but I was recently at Society of General Internal Medicine, and they had NYU had this cool thing called a promptathon, where they sort of developed a whole bunch of different ways in which they learned how to use large language models. So you can sort of even see some of the examples here: how to do diagnostic reasoning, how to communicate to a patient, how to help it with H&P. Even you can even use prompts to help yourself write better prompts, because the big thing about using AI is how to use it effectively. And to use it effectively, you have to sort of understand what we call prompt engineering. How do you ask the AI the appropriate way to give you the answer, and how to massage the answer to what you need it to be? So these are some of the skills that you can only get better with practice. So if you ignore AI and don't use it at all, you're never going to get better at using it. So that's sort of that takes me to my last thought was that it's really not the answer to everything, but it's use accelerating, and we really need to be able to learn how to use it if we want to be able to be efficient. But if you're able to ask the right questions, you can use AI. You can try out some fun things, and you'd be surprised at what it can do. And then, obviously, sitting back, thinking, reflecting, and learning about the things that you're getting from it, and obviously using it ethically. All right, so I'm going to leave that. Oh, by the way, if you couldn't tell, nearly all my slides were written by AI. I mean, all the infographics. That's with Napkin AI. It's a really great tool, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. All right, so here's some of the websites I wanted to show. So this one's the promptathon from NYU Langone. So you can sort of see where you can sort of help create SMART goals. It can help you with creating AI prompts, especially for those who like to study. It can help you develop Anki cards, which is something that happened after I went through all this, but I think this seems to be a popular thing among learners nowadays. So this promptathon.iime.cloud is a great resource that NYU has made public to everyone to use to learn a little bit. So you can sort of see here how to use for H&Ps, a little discussion about hallucinations, use for hospital notes, patient education. So really a great place from just a clear clinical standpoint how to use AI. For those of you who have not seen some of these other examples, I wanted to show some of them. So Open Evidence is a great tool. You can get a free account as long as you have an NPI. So you can ask any question. So how do I follow up incidental lung nodules? And sometimes obviously it takes server load, and as discussed earlier, there are obviously environmental concerns with all the water that's used for these servers to pump out the AI content that we have here. So obviously it can be slow, can be long at times. The thing about Open Evidence is Open Evidence actually has a close working relationship with, I think, New England Journal of Medicine, but it also provides short summaries from other journals as well. So you can sort of see here from the JAMA review, it gives me a good summary, and it looks pretty appropriate from what I already know. So I don't feel the need to have to go back and double check this. It's also providing the actual contents from the journal article, including the tables. So it's the JAMA review. Oftentimes it will give its own summary below as well. So you can sort of see here what it shows. It gives each of the citations here, as well as all the references, which is great. So, you can click on this, you can go straight to reference. What's nice here, so I can sort of show like I did before. So I can say that, patient had, so then I can have, I've reviewed this. I'm like, all right, so I can say, my 45-year-old patient, I can't spell it right, with no smoking history and no other risks, has a 3 mm nodule found incidentally. Can you help me draft a result note to discuss his follow-up CTs? And this is just sort of a quick way to sort of like get me started in terms of what I need to do. Yeah, so it gives me my result note, sort of how I want to, so what it says, what it may discuss. Let's see what else pops up. And here's the note, hopefully. That's all right. So I probably need to explain this is a result note I wanted to send a patient, whatnot. So, so that's an example of using open evidence, the citations, the references. I want to go to ChatGPT now, and I want to show you something that I did. So I don't know if you know this, but iOS in their note-taking app, if you record something, it can do a transcription of that. So sometimes if I'm in a long meeting that I know, especially when I'm managing a project or research or something, obviously I would make sure I would ask other people during my meeting if that's okay. But I will often record the meeting, and Apple can make a transcript. So actually for the first 20 minutes of this talk, I actually did that. I recorded the transcript, and let me refresh this. I uploaded to ChatGPT as we were talking. And so this is the transcript that the Apple OS made of my discussion that I just did, like I finished like 2 seconds ago. You can see in the prompt when I sent it in, I said, here's the transcript of my lecture, give me a detailed summary. And then here you can see, spelling isn't perfect, but you can see the transcript which popped up. And so I just popped all that in there. And this is the summary it gave me. So purpose and framing of the topic, my clinical takeaways and themes. Seems pretty cool. And then has a nice table of all the AI tools that I highlighted. Cautions, ethical reminders, some other resources, closing messages, things like that. So pretty cool. I use ChatGPT. Some may know that I do podcasting, so I podcast with the Curbsiders and the Cribsiders, and I also have a podcast with our division of general internal medicine called Everyday Medicine. And one of my current workflows is that I use another program to create transcripts because I use editing in this program called Descript. But to create my show notes, I use ChatGPT to make my show notes, so it's super useful from that standpoint. Doximity GPT is another similar GPT that's from Doximity. So obviously one of its big things is being HIPAA compliant. Here's a recent thing that I used it for. So I had a patient asking me to write antibiotics before their dental procedure. And so, I wanted to double check. I knew that we do not routinely do prophylactic antibiotics. So, but I asked again just to make sure. I wanted to make sure I double checked my references, and it seemed appropriate to what I already knew. And then I wanted to write a letter to the dentist saying that the patient does not need to have prophylactic antibiotics. So it sort of helped me draft up a letter in terms of key points, and I copy and pasted that and sent it to their dentist. Let's see, that's Doximity GPT. Oh, here is Napkin AI. So this is what I did. So I generated a copy of my entire discussion, basically a lot of the bullet points of the previous version of my slides, which didn't have any images on, and it generated into here, and you can sort of see here. So this is the slide on. Let's pick a good one. So say this is my slide on documentation and use case using how you can create draft notes with AI, summarize lab results, and streamline interprofessional communication. Those are my 3 bullet points I did. So I can highlight this. I can hit this little cool bullet point to see some of the previous things. And based on just those texts, it can create these infographics that I want. And it'll give me a couple different types of infographics. You can sort of scroll through here. Some of them don't make sense. Some of them do. What's great, so as we know, a lot of LLMs do not do great with text. But I found Napkin AI is super great with text. So you can sort of see here, this is, say I like this. I'll hit this style. I can even change how I want the fonts. And then, you can change your aspect ratio. So, 16 by 9 basically for my current PowerPoint. But if you're using squares for you're trying to use it for a poster or something like that, although there was some discussion about using AI for generated text or generated infographics or something earlier. But so this is super useful. So you can then export, you can download it, you can copy the clipboard, whatever you need to do. Next thing, so I just want to show you, I got promoted associate professor a couple of years ago, so I had to write this gigantic dossier, and I'm only using this because of what I'm going to show you next. So I just want to show you, this is an example of a gigantic document that has lots of things in it. So Google has this thing called Notebook LM. And so what's great is you can upload a bunch of resources and use it so I just have the dossier in here, but you could put up a bunch of different PDFs across a couple of different things that you're studying. So, and then it'll use that as a basis for all the questions you can ask it. So you can say, oh, what was Christopher's medical education? And it'll use my dossier and sort of pull up the interesting things from that document. So you can see how it can be used for a lot of different things. One cool thing that you can do, and probably this has been in the media a lot because Notebook LM can actually create a podcast based on the information that you have. So if I generate here, it can, we'll see what it shows, but I don't know, do I have, see how long it takes. I should have done this ahead of time. But it's pretty cool. They just have 2 people who sort of speak in a very interesting and fun manner with each other. But I guess we're at 1 o'clock, so I apologize. I meant to have more time for Q&A. And if people want to stay on to listen to what my dossier sounds like by a AI-generated podcast, you can stick around. But I'm available for any questions right now. Like everyone already knows all these things, so that's good. I see some chat questions. Let me drop that prompt on link in here.
Thank you for that super educational and insightful topic. I am very much a newcomer to this space and unfamiliar, so I just had a quick question. Do you find any value in, I guess, checking one large language model against another's? And so like submitting a prompt through ChatGPT and then submitting ChatGPT's response into Copilot, and that being like the cross check, or would they generate very similar responses?
I'm trying to make sure I understand the question. So would it be useful to use one LLM to cross-check another? So definitely, so technically speaking, I think different LLMs should have different sources in which they have pulled, they've trained their LLM on. So I think technically you could do that, but sort of there was some of that discussion early on about like, maybe these LLMs are getting dumber and dumber because they're actually, we've run out of every written text in the world, and now we're having it learn on other AI generated learning, and so it just sort of gets reiterated dumber. I don't know, because to be honest, the way I use it is I either use it to confirm something I already know, or to help me write something that I already know in terms of like writer's block and getting like a note down or whatnot. Or if I'm doing like research generation or whatnot, a lot of times I'm double checking a lot of those citations, especially if it comes out different from what I sort of expected. Does that make sense? So, I'm using it as a tool in terms of backing my expertise already versus doing a lot of things. So I think in the end, you just need to check your sources instead of just running it through another LLM.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Chu, for joining us today and sharing all of your helpful knowledge and insights. I know I've definitely learned a lot from you on using AI, so I appreciate you being here. And thank you all for joining. I think this marks the final professional development session of this residency year. So stay tuned for more with the new residency class.
And if anyone it just finished generating, so if anyone wants to hear what the AI podcast sounds like, I can share that right now. We'll see if anyone sticks around. All right. I'm going to share this. I want to know what they can say about myself.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we've got some really interesting source material laid out here. It's essentially a pretty comprehensive dossier about a physician, Dr. Christopher J. Chu.
That's right. And our goal today, our mission for this deep dive, is really to go beyond just, listing the facts. We want to unpack these sources, figure out the key insights about his career, his contributions, and try to understand what makes his work stand out, especially for you, the listener, since you sent this material our way.
Absolutely. Just to give everyone the quick background from the sources, we're looking at someone whose medical path started, interestingly, in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And now he's a significant figure in general internal medicine at Ohio State University.
And the material makes it clear pretty quickly he's not just, one thing. He's described as a dedicated clinician, a recognized educator, a leader within his institution, and maybe most notably, a major innovator.
Especially in the digital space, right?
Exactly, particularly in the digital
Just believe
space.
how narcissistic
So
it
we're
was
going
for
to
me to
explore
choose
how
this
all these
material.
different facets kind of mesh together.
Okay, let's dive into that foundation. His patient care and leadership.
All right. I think one thing interesting is when they did ways in which how conversational the tone was, and they very specifically wanted to make sure it was extremely conversational. They'll like laugh at each other's jokes, and they'll make bad jokes as they're talking stuff. So you guys should check out Notebook LM at some point. So all right, I'll let everyone go. I apologize for keeping you guys extra. So Raleigh's got my information. You have any questions, any issues, or if you want to learn about podcasting, stuff like that, send me a message.
Thanks, Dr. Chu.
All right.